Gareth Hunt from U.S. Army Esports. He won 5 of his 6 games and tied in one of his games. So that's how he did. Let's take a look at this list, which he only made a minor tweak yet. A tweak I actually quite like with this Clifton Russell archetype list. So let's see what Garth ended up running in his change. So Garth had Zodgrod Wortsnagga. That is the #1 change to this list if you've seen it before. So we have 3 units of shock attack guns, 1 with Gitz goggles, and 1 with Smoky Gubbins. Smoky Gubbins is one of those enhancements that if you got the points, you go ahead and bring it. If you don't, not much of a big loss usually. Gitfinder goggles, on the other hand, is one that you always bring. Always bring Gitfinder goggles. Don't argue with me. No one will ever agree with you that I'm playing the game. Then you have big shock attack gun, just chilling with no enhancement. This list has a nice thick core of 5 max unit of Gretchen. And now one of these units is being led by Zodgrod. So in the original version of this list, there's no Zod. I'll give my opinions on that as we go forward. 2 Stormboy units, 3 10-man units of Flash Gitz, 2 max unit of Lootas. Each banner is carrying a custom Mega Blaster. So custom Mega Blasters have been the question. Okay, we all agree the consensus is Lootas are where it's at. You know, anybody from me to Happy Crumper, which Happy Crumper came out the video a long time ago as well, from his math hammering, that Lootas were legit. But what the weapon is on Spanners, what do you want to bring, right? What do you really want to bring? People are somewhat in the Rocket camp and somewhat in the custom Mega Blaster camp. The easy way to break this down is custom Mega Blaster gives you more damage peak potential and consistent amount of shots into those high toughness units, which are kind of what orcs struggle into for the most part, right? Even in this detachment, if you don't have other units, let's say like a Gorkanaut, you can really be intimidated by those units that want to just stat check you with good armor and thickness. On the other hand, rockets do great into elite infantry bricks, terminators, custodians, things that are 3 wounds, and you're like, I can get blasted into you in my rockets. So this is up to you as the individual. What are you more likely to see? If you're more likely to see big, thick boys, you might be more interested in the custom Mega Blaster just to peak the chance of a 7 damage, right? And you get 3 shots because you know in response you're about to get picked up as the looted unit, so you need those 3 shots just to come straight out, right? But if you're going to elite, thick, heavy infantry units, there's those are Darkwing Terminator places, there's custodians everywhere, as Gatekeeper Army, go on and on, other orcs and such. 3 damage feels pretty good, so people like to bring the rockets on that. So you pick based off your meta and your archetype. Then you have 3 units of Mek Gunz. 1 is a full 3-man unit of Mek Gunz, and then the other are 2 Mek Gunz only. Each one of these units models is ran with a bubble chucka. So all of them are bubble chuckas. That's a lot of dice rolling. Bubble chuckas are totally legit, guys. They're not a meme. Based off your preferences, we'll say, in dice rolling and some interpretation of the rules. You choose between bubble smasher, I go smasher, but that's not here or there. My boy Garth did great with all these bubble chuckas, which is thematically hilarious and awesome. Today's sponsor, Baron of Dice. So Baron of Dice has great dice. They have actually enabled us to give these dice out for our paint competitions. So I greatly advise that you go out there. We have a link in the description for 5% discount. That's, of course, because nobody likes taxes. Shout out to Baron of Dice because they are actually customizing orc dice just for us that you guys will be able to get a hold of, and they look exceptional. So shout out to Baron of Dice. Really appreciate you guys, and I really do suggest you get them. I love the actual texture these dice have. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So let's take a look at Garth's win path, as my boy did get top 3 and take no losses. Here we go with the undefeated orcs, baby. So his first matchup, and this is what I enjoyed to see right off the bat when I looked at this, he went into Astra Millitarum. So we have regimental engines here, 2 of them, a tank commander, 1 unit of Catachan jungle fighters, a Chimera, a Basilisk, Hellhound, 1 Leman Russ battle tank, a Leman Russ Demolisher, a Demon Rush Eradicator, and then a Leman Rush Exterminator, and a Leman Rush Vanquisher. Yes, he brought the large variety of all the same chassis of tank, but with a bunch of different weapons. So they have their different profiles. Some give better at AP, some are just straight better at dealing with armor, some are better, just straight up cheaper. Kind of throwaway, kind of like this Vanquisher, which is the cheapest version of it, but it's still good at killing tanks. So how they actually use these Leman Russes, though it looks kind of spastic because they're all over the place, each one has its role, whether it be cheap that it can be thrown away, or it's really good into one kind of profile. We have 1 Rogel Dorn, very reliable to be on a lot of these lists of guard lists, and then 2 Scout Sentinels. Though this list is very thick and armor heavy, that is also most likely its downfall when you finally look at this list that Garth did make the change, is that Zodgrod having the reactive 12-inch move or on the wall, just simply moving 12-inch moves, because to make that more clear to anybody who's new, Zod has access to a reactive move strat because he is with Gretchen, so give him the Grot keyword to use the reactive move. Therefore, when he is in the WAAAGH, his movement is 12. The reactive move is your movement. Therefore, he moves 12 inches on the wall, right? Reactively. Therefore, Zod being able to run up the table, be positioned, even these Catachan jungle fighters not understanding or really taking him too serious, move within range of him because they also have a scout, right? And so they move it closer and then they go first and they touch him. Or simply Zod scouts closer to a building. He goes first. He stages in that building. The Catachan comes closer. The Chimera comes closer. And then the dude just reactive moves even closer to them on the wall. It gets all crazy. A lot of staging and tagging you would need to do because this matchup is potent. Guard is one of those armies that has a lot of potential to kill us, has a real lot of great tools, great armor, and those durability stats, such like that. Bubble Chuckers, if they get that anti-vehicle, though, is chewing through these tanks like nothing else. The Bubble Chuckers anti-vehicle profile is amazing, especially when you can get it in Dread Mob. So, of course, it takes a little luck, but that's part of the fact of just bringing Bubble Chuckers too. That could have been totally just been a factor as well. So, really cool to see that. I like to think that Zod plus Bubble Chuckers going off, and of course Overwatch, the fact that you could just actually play the mission with a bunch of Grot boys and Flash Gitz being able to stand in the primary, and he simply having vehicles which now are getting rerolls and getting systematically picked up by all of our potential anti-vehicle weapons is how I think how that would end up going well. So Garth right there, and Garth is an excellent player, so of course he could overcome if there was too much of a skill discrepancy too. You always got to take that into consideration, guys, because Guard are still definitely very hard. So then we have his second matchup. He went into Adeptus Mechanicus with the Skitarii Hunter cohort. We have Belisarius Call, Skitarii Marshal, Tech Priest Manipulus, and another Tech Priest Manipulus. We have 3 units of the Skitarii Rangers, followed by 2 3-man units of Iron Strider Belisari, 2 units of the Cataphan Breachers, 2 units of the Sky Stalkers, followed by 1 unit of Rust. So the good and bad part of this list is the Canoptic Breachers. You bring them because they can actually go off and actually do good damage. So can the Belisarius Iron Striders. Both of these units are highly susceptible to Lootas once they start getting an open. Even the Cataphan Breachers, though they get good armor saves and stuff, you can still argue that Lootas can go off on them as well. Not to mention, this stuff is going to want to come to the table to deal with the Gretchen because you have so much OC. They're going to throw these Rangers up there. The Rangers are going to feel like they can actually kill your Gretchen. Your Gretchen, especially if you do have Zod, can end up running up and demolishing these units because the Grots are all getting +1 to hit and wound with their little pistols, shooting away these other Rangers if they get into combat or get close to them. It's kind of hilarious. But like the Striders, Breachers, none of these things are really standing and withholding the nasty firepower that's coming from this Dread Mob list. So in a gun versus gun matchup where 2 armies both have very good shooting designs, or we'll say they both have a shooting preference, we'll say that. How about that? The one that has a better, more reliable outcome, which would be the Orcs in this case, just because they have more bodies, they have nasty Overwatch, they have the good profiles for it, and they have plenty of chaff, right? When you're talking about point per point, what's better at shooting, a Cataphan or a Luda? Of course, a Cataphan Breacher is better. But when you're talking about an army that both armies want to shoot, the army that can actually bait you to shoot first and expose yourself and then reactively respond to you are the ones that are going to have the advantage in that matchup. So though, and I might have said it inverse earlier incorrectly, sorry if I did. Though Adeptus Mechanicus is better point for point, statistically speaking, shooting into the Orcs, we still have the potent enough profiles that once they start participating in the game and getting involved, they do start getting killed and picked up, and they're very, very expensive. The fact that we can just flood them with Grots up the field and force them to start playing the game with us, and then our Lootas and our Flash Gitz and our Mek Gunz come out and start erasing them, and then those units themselves aren't very that expensive, which means if you're playing a DAKKA WAAAGH, understand that you are going to face armies that are better at shooting at you. Therefore, you need to take advantage of baiting, right? And sometimes the enemy just doesn't fall for the bait. But right here, he got 92-point win. In his third game, he went into Grey Knight. Called it New Beginnings, but in this case, he got dunked on because it was a 92-point win. We have Brotherhood Librarian, a Grandmaster with First of the Fray, Grandmaster Dremesis Dread Knight, Kaldor Drago. Of course, he wants to jump on you turn 1, but you're going to jump into a bunch of Grots. 2 units of 5 Terminators, a Strike Squad Marine, a big Paladin Brick, 1 Nemesis Dread Knight, followed by a Calades Assassin, and some Imperial Breachers. We spoke about the Calades Assassin, right? If you're playing Warhorde, you end up having to really pay attention to this guy. Super annoying. But when you're playing Dread Mob, you're like, well, none of my stuff is popping strats near you. So cool, dude, do a stand over there. Of course, also when you're playing Dread the Grey Knights, the fact that you have a dumb amount of bodies means you're filling up a lot of that space. You're out OCing them greatly. And then when you do get exposed, when these paladins do get exposed, which when they're playing with the paladins are a stupid annoying of speed bump, essentially. They'll stick them 3 inches if they can within you, right up in your deployment zone, right up in your face turn 1 if they can, because they're expensive. You think they're not going to throw them away. No. Because they're expensive and highly durable and they can drop, and then if they kill whatever they're in contact with, if you get close to them, they can react and move back into reserves, means that they actually have defensive capabilities built in on top of -1 to wound. So they could, in theory, decide I'm going to drop paladins within close range of you and Kaldor Drago you and really pressure you on. But they'd be running into screens in this case, and you can really actually fill up the space. So many Lootas, so many Flash Gitz, so many Grots. There's nowhere for them to drop. Now they're actually playing the shooting game right across the table from you. And of course, they can make saves. They can just get lucky and get 4-ups. But your Mek Gunz can actually shine out here and kill the Dread Knights. He doesn't have too many of them, which would be very problematic, but he doesn't. So it's about a Terminator bodies, meaning your Lootas can go off. Your Mek Gunz, like I said, could go off, and then just strictly Grots getting in the way, Zod being able to reactive move and force the paladins to come out. And even if the paladins come out, ignore modifiers and shoot everything into your Grot unit. If it's the WAAAGH, there's a good chance they're not dying with Zod, the 20-man unit. Or if you decide to go to ground, or if it's for free, you could simply just do that, and he's not dying either. So it might come off as crazy, it is, but you totally can win this matchup. It is a big skill thing, though. Very big skill gap here. 92-point win. Great job there, dude, because I know that was a really, really good skill win to come over on the Grey Knights like that. Even though it's not what I would call the peak list of Grey Knights, because the tools and assets they have, they can give orcs a hard time. So good job taking them out with Dread Mob, with board controls and good strat, I'm sure, spending. So in his 4th game, sorry, I was taking a look there. This is where he tied. And he tied going into another Grey Knights list. This isn't the same one because the other one was called Change 2.0, right? Right here, New Beginnings 2.0. So this is another Grey Knights list, which is called Grey Knights Making Saves, because that's what they live on. They're like, we can get 2-ups and we can get 4-ups. If I make them, I make them. So we got triple Brotherhood Librarians. This is their version of I need to pop thick transports and thick models and toughness units. Grandmaster Dread Knight, and Kaldor Drago. I believe the sigil of excellence is the one where if you target them to shoot, they can redeploy. So be careful of that as well when you're doing this matchup. Because they have redeploy when you get range of them, and then one of their enhancements is redeploy when you target them. Just, Then you have Brotherhood Terminator, nice big brick, probably for Kaldor Drago again. Another Terminator unit, but a 5-man, 2 strike squads, which of course Lootas love to see that. Normally these guys are like, I'm gonna fire and fade, and the Lootas are like, that's cool, bro, but as soon as you're exposed and you're standing on the objective to score, I'm gonna just murder you. It's gonna be great when you start participating in the game. Lootas think that too when they see those guys. Even though they get 2-up saves, remember they get 2-up saves, but just pure volume. Cladius Assassin and Quatoria Agents. Again, you see the Cladius Assassin. Again, if you're playing Warhorde and you're going to Grey Knights, their annoying abilities and indirect way of playing the game with you would start compounding you. Of course, you could still beat them. I'm just saying you have to think this ends up being a completely different style of matchup. Crazy board control. You're gonna end up throwing these big breaks into things that don't matter. You do have to stop these Brotherhood Librarians from like individually dropping somewhere dumb. But in reality, they can kill themselves, or simply you can kill them and you start getting points for them. The mission can also make it not favorable that they're giving away all those. Oops, I think I just got rid of one of my players there for my next list, but that's fine. I'll pull it up. Then we have that was his 4th game. He did tie. You can see he was doing very well. We would have to know what the mission is to really distinguish what made the difference in that game for him to actually tie this time instead of winning. But the person that he tied with got 2nd right there. So it is what it is. Obviously, they're both exceptional players. So very cool to see that. Then we have his 100-point game, which he ended up going into Imperial Knight. So he was very excited for this, I'm sure, after that. We have a Knight Crastus and a nice Crastus Lancer. The other one's a Knight Crastus Atropos. Atropos? I don't think that is. We have 3, 4, 5, 6 Arbinger Warglaves, followed by a Cladius Assassin and an Evisor Assassin. I can very much see how he's winning this one. Funny enough, Zod is freaking crazy in the Knights matchup. All these Helvrins and these Knights hate to see it. They can take up such a stupid footprint and not allow these Knights to move because, of course, the big Knights can be like, I could just move over you. I'm allowed to. But you cannot end within an inch of them or on top of them. Duh. Therefore, I can just fill up the space where you're going to end if I pre-measure you. So a lot of time you can end up doing that. You can hurt the Armiger Warglaves with something like a Luda unit, maybe even a Flash Gitz unit, and then Zodgrod and his Grots can run in there and finish it off. It's kind of obnoxious and great to see. So this list can end up just getting torn apart all day. We have the strats innately built into this, and these units aren't running 2-up saves. Therefore, they are susceptible to our stupid volume of fire, and that's exactly what happens. I've had that matchup enough times personally with Dread Mob, bunch of different versions of it, and it always kind of goes that way, especially if you have Zodgrod. So I'm very in favor of Zodgrod, and Lootas playing big role there. Into his final matchup, he went into Catan Necrons Hypercrypt Legion. So he had a Catan of the Night Shard Deceiver. We have a Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, Hexmark Destroyer, another Hexmark Destroyer, a third Hexmark Destroyer, followed by 2 Transcendent Catans, the 2 basic ones. So my boy's kicking it back to just Catan spam. Let's go. And he made it this far because you see how high up the list he's going. So sometimes people just don't have the tech for this anymore, right? If you don't bring Gaz as an arc player, you're not even taking for this, really. You're like, let's go, right? You could with Dread Mob, but I'm saying another Warhordes, you're like, this could be a problem. We have Death Marks, Doomsday Arcs, 3 of them. These guys are way harder to kill than you would expect. They have these respectable like shooting potential, but if they stand on an objective, they're just giving free OC, and then sometimes they can't die. But the Dread Mob, they can, because we have the volume and the weapons to actually deal with them. Plus, they're not great toughness, right? So I'd love to see that. It's funny because sorry, I was looking at something right now. Necrons can actually, Hypercrypt can actually be a huge problem if you're not just so obnoxious that you could just fill the table with 100 grots, especially our grots that can that can scout, right? It's just like pretty obnoxious right there, where you're just, okay, I'm just everywhere in the middle of the table. And also just, the Doomsday Arcs are only T9. And they have a 3-up armor save with 14 wounds. They do heal, right? They can heal themselves. They don't, if you don't one-shot them, they die. But with having a 3-up armor save and T9, you're just getting chewed up, my boys. You're getting chewed up, because even Flash Gitz can take a chunk out of you now if they pop lethal. So I love to see that. Of course, being able to pop lethals is crazy on all these Catans. If you do big shells for bigger Gitz, from what I'm remembering, forgive me if I don't remember correctly, but I'm pretty dang sure about this. From the order of how that works for additioning damage, he will half the damage, and then you'll add 1 damage from big shells for bigger Gitz, from what I understand. So it would get around his having damage, which would feel very good, of course, because then it'll take you back to 2 damage and all those Lootas. All in all, I can see how you ended up being this, having crazy board control, and the Necrons not being able to just drop right next to you, or 9 inches of you, and then even if they did drop within 9 inches of you, they're charging into Grots because they don't have volume, or Grots are stupid for Catan to try to kill, especially on the wall. They're pretty much going to just get dragged out for the end of the game. Of course, he did get 85 points, so I would like to see what the mission was. And of course, it's not that straightforward when the Catans can just straight up kill as much as they want, and a lot of them are tiny little models, so they can hide, like the Nightbringer and Stage and everywhere, and kill. So he didn't get a blowout score, but it would be a very much an uphill battle for the Necron. So shout out to Gareth Hunt for his Dread Mob list. Let's take a look at it real quick one more time. He had what we would call a Clifton Russell archetype, but he was running it with the twist, which is Zodgrod Wortsnagga. In my opinion, that's the kind of twist you want to put on this list, and I'm very much in favor of that. As personally, when I ran just the max amount of Mek Gunz, sometimes you just didn't get their value. You end up using the Mek Gunz more like bait sometimes to get someone to shoot out. They only move 3 inches. They're constantly kind of fighting for a spot for reserves, just like right along to your Flash Gitz or maybe even your Lootas. Therefore, I can totally see losing a couple Mek Gunz, maybe even more so in the future. So shout out to Garth. Love the list. 30 Flash Gitz, 30 Lootas, 3 Sags, Zodgrod, 100 Gretchen with their accompanying runt herders, and 2 units of Storm Boys. Shout out to the DAKKA wall. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!